So our task for today is going to analyze some documents and answering the question, to what extent had the colonists developed a sense of their identity and unity as Americans by the eve of the Revolution? Now, the two things I've passed out to you have this question. It's on the packet, it's right on the front, and it's on the top of this chart. So either way, you can see the question on both the documents in front of you. What I want you to do first, in order to understand what this question is asking, is I want you to read this question to yourself, and then I want you to turn to the partner next to you. I want you to turn your body, look at their face, and then discuss what you think this question is asking and put it in your own words. Does that make sense? So you're going to take the question and rewrite it in your own words. So put it in student speak. Okay, so you're going to write down in your own words, to what extent had the colonists developed a sense of their identity and unity as Americans by the eve of the Revolution? Everyone understand what they're supposed to do? I'm going to give you 4 minutes. Discuss with a partner and then write down in your own words, either on the top of your chart or on this packet where the question is, what is this question asking you? Again, please do that in your own words. Okay, you have 4 minutes. Get to work. So physically turn your body, look at your partner in the face, and discuss. So you're not just sitting there, folks. Physically turn to the person next to you and discuss. If you're not sure, raise your hand. I'll come down and talk to you. If there are elements of this you're not sure about, please let me know. But otherwise, okay. Well, one part of this question that might help is, to what extent is asking by how much? So by how much had the colonists developed a sense of their identity and unity as Americans by the eve of the Revolution? So try to rephrase that in your own words. By how much had the colonists developed a sense of their identity and unity as Americans by the eve of the Revolution? Try to rephrase this in your own words. You have about 2 more minutes. So again, you should be writing something. You can make this as simple as possible in terms of your statement. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You can make this like a few words. But what is this question asking? And then write it down. You can start writing this in your own words. You can write it on either the packet or the chart. Or write it next to the question in your own words. What do you think this question is asking? You're going to write it. No, you're going to write it at the very top, not in the box. Yeah. Try your best here, folks. Even if you're wrong, that's okay. I just want you to try to guess what you think this question is asking. But not trying is not an acceptable answer, so make it an effort. What do you think this question is asking? Okay, we'll take a few people. Let's see if you guys were able to figure it out. Draven, in your own words. Quiet down. What do you think this question is asking?
By how much have the colonists developed and that's what we meant. Like, we're not finished.
But what do you think they're asking, though? Like
what happened? Like, how were they for the revolution?
It's not even for the revolution. This question is not necessarily about the revolution. It's about the colonists themselves.
Oh, like how they had a name for them before?
Yeah, sort of like by how much had the colonists maybe made a name for themselves or started calling themselves Americans by the revolution? So maybe that's the question, you know? By how much were the colonists calling themselves Americans by the revolution? That might be a good question. Let's go with someone else. Let's go with Jasmine. What do you think you have?
How far did the colonists go to create their own independence as Americans before the revolution?
So how far did the colonists go to create their own independence before the revolution? So that's partially true too, but it's not about creating independence. It's not about a political thing. It's about, again, identity and unity. It's all about this idea of identity, like describing themselves as Americans, seeing themselves as Americans. Let's go with one more person. Eva, what do you think you have? How did the colonists represent and view themselves before the revolution? So also good, but I want this emphasis on this idea of American identity. So does anyone think that they might have a good one? Anyone want to take a stab at it? Just make an effort or an attempt here. Really what this question is asking, folks, is how American were they before the revolution? Like, how American were they before the revolution? Or did these Americans, or did the colonists see themselves as Americans before the revolution? You know, were we calling ourselves Americans before we declared our independence? Or we declared independence like, oh, we're Americans, that's what we'll call ourselves. Did we have a common identity before we declared independence, or did that come after independence? Did we have some degree of unity before the revolution, or did that unity come after the revolution? Does that make sense, folks? What it's asking is, again, how American were we before the revolution? Did we have an American identity or American unity before the revolution? That's really what this is asking. Did we have an American identity or unity before the revolution? If you don't have something like that written down, you should write that down now, because that's what this question is asking. And folks, while I am going to guide you through some of these first few prompts, eventually you're going to have to be able to do this on your own. And you're going to have to be able to analyze and decipher what this question is asking. Because if we break it up, folks, what it's asking is, first off, to what extent? So by how much, right? That's by how much. Had the colonists developed an identity as Americans? I mean, that's a pretty standard question. Like, did they develop an identity as Americans? Did they or didn't they? So had they developed their identity as Americans? That's what it's looking for. By the eve of the revolution. So before or after the revolution? Before. So you guys need to be able to look at a question like this and understand what it's asking of you. This is one of the easier ones. So if you're struggling with this, feel free to ask, but you need to understand what the question is asking. But has everyone written this in their own words? Or at least something that they understand? Okay, moving forward. So here's what you guys are going to do. I know it seems like a lot, but it's just because there's a lot of instruction. It's actually not that complicated. I've given you a chart. In column 1, you're going to go ahead and rephrase the main arguments from each document. And you're going to cite where you think that idea came from. So for example, looking at document A, let's say you say, oh, the main idea is we have to turn into a snake. Well, how would you know that? You would say, well, there's a picture of a snake. So that's pretty obvious to me. One way you can do it also, if that there's multiple main ideas, you might circle this and be like, here's point 1 and here's point 2, so that when you're writing main ideas 1 and 2, you can write down main idea 1, I can identify that in the top picture. Main idea 2, I can identify that with the text on the bottom. Does that make sense? Because you don't have to rewrite the text or redraw the picture in this box here. You can just say, oh, well, based on what I read in the document, the main arguments are this and this, or just this is the main argument. Does that make sense so far? Okay? In regards to connecting the prompt, what you're then going to do is in that second column, it's asking you to connect to the prompt, is that showing colonial identity or unity? And you have to explain why or how. So is it saying that they had an identity before the revolution, or is it saying that they did not have that American identity before the revolution? Does that make sense? So now not only are you taking the document and analyzing it, you have to use it to answer the question. Is it showing that they answered, is it showing that they were or were not united? Everyone clear on that? Okay, I'm going to ask you to re-explain these to me in a second. The third fact then is additional information. What you're going to do is you're going to list down any other facts that this document didn't include but could be discussed. For example, does it say who drew this document?
No.
But do we know who it is? Yeah, who is it?
The colonies. 13 colonies.
No, but specifically who made this? The guy who wrote Poor Richard's Almanac. Who made this? Benjamin Franklin. So you could include in that third column, Ben Franklin. By the way, when did we draw this? For what war? It's for the French and Indian War. So when you're talking about this document, can you mention the French-Indian War and Benjamin Franklin? Yes, you can. So in that last column, you're going to write down any additional information that this document reminds you of. Does that make sense, folks? Okay. So, real quick, so I can have you guys understand what we're doing here, I'm going to have you guys re-explain what you're doing. Giovanni, what is the first step?
First step is to show what this document is making, like the claim that it's making.
Sure, so what is the main argument of the document, right? You can write that down in your own words. You don't have to write in complete sentences. Bullet points are okay. All right? Number 2, Jasmine, what should you be doing in the second column?
You're supposed to answer whether it shows American identity or not.
Right.
Why or how.
So you're going to explain, you're going to answer the exact question. Is it showing or is it not showing identity, right? And the third part, Jonathan, what are you supposed to do in that third column?
There's like facts that basically aren't there, but that you can like basically explain to them.
Yeah, so you can list
Said in the flag, Benjamin Franklin.
the French Indian War.
Yeah.
You're going to add additional facts. So what facts does this document remind you of? That can help answer the question. Does that make sense? So you're going to include additional supporting facts that help you, that this document reminds you of, that'll help you answer the question. These facts might be people, places, laws, dates, events, whatever, but they can be anything. Does that make sense, folks? We're going to do the first few together, just so we're all on the same page. So, let's all look at document A here. That's going to be on the front of your packet. The snake. I want you guys to take about 3 minutes to look at this. I'll give you 4 minutes. I want you to write down what you think the main idea is of this cartoon. I'm not asking for, oh, what are the larger implications of it and what does it mean? I'm asking you, literally, what is this one document saying? What is this one document saying? So you can go ahead and talk to your partner. Tell me what this document is saying. You can write all over this document. And then you're going to go ahead and answer, does this document show that the colonists are united or they're not united? Okay, so you have 4 minutes. Spend some time thinking about it. So again, physically look at the documents and talk to someone. Get to work.
It's the opposite of
So there's one real main idea here, if you can pull it out, maybe two, but there should be one major idea. What does this document want you to know or do? When Benjamin Franklin wrote this, what did he want? What is the main idea? What does he want you to do? And then when you're done, does this show that they are united or not united? And that's the harder part. So talk to someone and then write. You have about 3 minutes. Show that they are or are not united. So this one you're going to have to make more of an argument. Would you interpret that this is showing that they were united before the revolution, or that they were not united before the revolution? By the way, you can argue it both ways. So this can be made both ways. So choose one and decide. But you have to try to argue that it's showing that they are united or not united. Hello? Yes. Sure. Laura, you going to help?
I have an ear to practice when I get the hearing aid. What? What did you say? Is he talking smack again? The homework, yeah.
You're like, tell you what?
All right, so let's see what you guys came up with. Henry! So what is the main idea that Benjamin Franklin hopes that you pull from this?
That the 13 colonies should unite so they can win the war.
Yeah, the 13 colonies should unite. That's really the main argument. Unite or what?
Or die.
Or we'll lose, right? So unite or lose. That's the main argument. I mean, that's really what it's saying. Unite or we lose. Is there any other way to put that? I mean, there are, but is there any other main points here? That's pretty much it. Either unite or we'll lose. So that's the easy part. Here's the hard part. How does this help us? So Lewis, do you think the document like this is saying that the colonists are already united or they're not united? Why not? So if they get together, they'll be more powerful, which is suggesting that currently, are they united? No. Because if they were already united, would they have had to say, hey guys, let's join up? I mean, if we were best friends, would I have to say, hey, let's be best friends? We're already best friends, right? But if we weren't best friends, but I thought we should be, might I print an article in the newspaper that says, hey, we should be best friends? So what you're saying is they're probably not united because they had to ask to be united, right? So that is one argument, folks. You can say, no, they're not united because they had to ask to be united. Does that make sense to everyone? They had to ask to join. If they were already united, would there be any reason to have a cartoon like this? That wouldn't make any sense. But who can make the opposite argument? You can make the opposite argument, though. Does anyone think they can make the opposite argument? This can also be used to argue that it shows that they were united. Think more hopeful optimism. Anyone? Can anyone here make the argument that it shows that they were united? Or they could be united?
Didn't because we eventually joined?
Well, yeah, but we can't predict that. We're assuming that based on this, though, we can't make predictions because he didn't know that. But he did believe that it was possible. I mean, really, folks, the mere fact that it was possible, does that maybe argue the fact that there was some common identity that could bring us together? If we thought that we were going to kill each other, would I even have made this cartoon? No, but if I believed that unity was possible, then does this cartoon make sense? Like, oh yeah, guys, we're so close. We're Americans already. All we have to do is unite. And if we unite, would we be so powerful? So powerful? That's what he's saying. So could it be also argued the other way? That the potential for unity is what shows that we are united. If I thought it was impossible, we would never be best friends, would I have even bothered putting that ad in the newspaper? No, but because I know that we'd be so awesome together, we'd be the bestest of friends, I think we should do it. Because we have so much in common. We like movies and history. But does that make sense, folks? This can be argued both ways. So you can say yes or no for this document. Is it up to you to decide? You can do one or the other. Additional facts we already did. What additional facts can we use here? Let's go with Alexis. What additional facts? Like who wrote it? And what war was this for? French and Indian War. Correct. So those could be your facts for column number 3. Questions there? Let's move on to a much more difficult one. It's less of a picture. Turn the page. Let's look at the documents. Document B. Okay, folks, in document B, this will be more wordy. So your task is again to read this. It'd be nice to know who Edmund Burke is, but do you know who that is?
No.
No? Oh well, too bad. That's just the way it's gonna be. I mean, like, it's not important always to know who it is. If you know who it is that helpful?
Yeah.
If you don't, oh well, screw it. You guys have to still push through. So, govern America as you govern an English town which happens not to be represented in Parliament? Are gentlemen really serious when they propose this? Is there a single trait of resemblance between those few towns and a great and growing people spread over a vast quarter of the globe, separated from us by a mighty ocean? The eternal barriers of nature forbid that the colonies should be blended or coalesce into the mass of this kingdom. We have nothing therefore for it but to let them carry across the ocean into the woods and deserts of America the images of the British Constitution. Your task is to do the same thing again. Read through it and then with a partner, determine what are the 1 or 2 main ideas. And really, folks, most of these documents have 1 or 2 main ideas. I don't need like 90 main ideas. 1 or 2 main ideas, and then tell me, is this showing that there was an American identity or not? and then see if you can come up with 1 or 2 pieces of outside information. Cool? Okay, same task, folks. 4 minutes. Get to it. Analyze. Read it to yourself and then talk to your partner. In your own words, discuss that document, rephrase the argument, and tell me, showing that they were or were not having an American identity. Again, folks, you have 1 minute. And again, I'm giving you about 4 minutes per document right now, and then I'm telling you the answer. But no, on the day of the AP test, you have like 15 minutes to read all 8 to 10 documents, analyze them, and know how you're going to use them in an essay. So I will slowly walk you guys through this, but you have a DBQ coming up in about 4 weeks. You'll have another essay before that. But you guys are going to have to learn how to do this pretty quickly. So if you're struggling now, let me know, because at least I can hold your hand through this process. Because after this, guys, you just charge right through, and you have to know how to do this. So while it's hard, try to do it. Okay, folks. So again, there's a lot of stuff here that might be difficult to understand, but for the vast majority of it, you only need to know just a small piece of it to really understand the main argument. So does anyone think they know what the main argument is? I want to take a stab at it and take a guess as to what they think the main argument might be here. Come on, folks, I mean, the argument is there. Brian, what do you think?
Well, the main argument is trying to say that why would you govern America if they are not represented in Parliament?
So why would you govern America if they're not represented in Parliament? That's one argument being made. Not necessarily the main argument, but you're right. That is definitely one argument being made. What else, Amanda?
Are the Germans really serious?
Huh?
Yeah.
Say that one more time?
Are the German gentlemen really serious when they propose it?
But what are they proposing? And what gentleman are you referring to? I mean, so the English, sure, but what are they proposing? I mean, part of it is the main idea. And the main idea, again, the main thing you should be pulling out of this, folks, is this. Is there a single trait of resemblance between those few towns, and they're talking about England, and the great and growing people spread over a vast quarter of the globe, separated from us by a mighty ocean? What do they mean by, is there a single trait of resemblance? What does that mean?
Like,
Do we have anything in common between those few towns in England and the great growing people spread over a vast quarter of the globe, separated from us by a mighty ocean? Is there anything that we have in common between us in England and those people halfway across the ocean? They're also saying the eternal barriers of nature forbid that the colonies should be blended into the mass of this kingdom. What are the eternal barriers of nature that they're talking about? What barrier of nature are they talking about? Guys, what barrier exists between the British and the colonists? The ocean. So the ocean forbids that the colonists should be blended. And don't even worry if you don't know what coalesce means. It means blended because it's an or. The ocean should forbid that the colonists be blended into the mass of this kingdom, which suggests what? These colonies, what will never happen to them? They'll never be blended in with the kingdom because they're separated by an ocean. So are they ever going to be the same? So, instead, we should just let them do what? If they're never going to be like us, then what should we let them do? Be themselves. You know? Let them have images of the British Constitution, but are we going to have them be exactly like the British Constitution? Just images of it. So, folks, does that make a little bit more sense? They're saying they're separated by an ocean. They're never going to be part of us. So are they American or are they British? They're probably more American. So if you look at the second column then, folks, does this show that there is American unity and identity, or does it show that there's not American unity and identity? Does it show that there is or is not? So raise your hand if you think it shows that there is American identity and unity. Raise your hand confidently. Just take a guess. Raise your hand if you think it shows that there's not American identity and unity. And some of you are not raising your hands. So let's try this again. Raise your hand if you think it shows that there is American identity and unity. Choose one or the other. And raise everything it shows that there's not American identity or unity. Folks, it's showing that there is American identity or unity. Here's why. In this statement, there's two kinds of people according to Edmund Burke. Who are the two kinds of people? The British and the Americans. And he's saying, if you're not like us, the British, then you're the other. And you are them. So, really what it comes down to, folks, is the British don't recognize the Americans as British. Does that make sense? Even the British don't think we're British. Because we're not. We're Americans. Does that make sense, folks? Again, difficult documents, but you have to be able to parse through it. So can you guys now see why that's the argument? And you guys see how that answers the question? That the British don't even think that we're British because we're far too different. Because what's separating us? The ocean. What's some outside information then that shows that we are literally different? Where do some things that make us colonies different from England? What do we have that's different from them? You can just name 2 or 3 things. What's different in the colonies than in the England? Democracy. So we have democracy. That's a difference. Democracy versus monarchy. There's one difference right there. So that can be one of your additional supporting information. Democracy versus monarchy. What's something else that we have to deal with in the colonies that the British don't? Abel? Native Americans. There's another thing we have to deal with that they don't. There's another piece of outside information. You can mention town meetings or, I don't know, self-government or, I don't know, the frontier. But these are all facts that can be used as additional support. Good there? Okay. Moving on to document C. I've included some definitions in case you guys needed them. The wicked, first of all, it's Richard Henry Lee to Arthur Lee, so we know who Richard Henry Lee is. He an American or a Brit? He's an American, right? He's the one who motioned for independence, so he just put American next to his name. Like, yeah, we know that guy. The wicked violence of the ministry is so clearly expressed as to leave no doubt of their fatal determination to ruin both countries unless a powerful and timely check is interposed by the body of the people. A very small corrupted secret meeting or junto in New York accepted, all North America is now most firmly united and as firmly resolved to defend their liberties ad infinitum, or again and again, against every power on earth that may attempt to take them away. The most effectual or effective measures are everywhere taking to secure a sacred observance of the association. Manufacturers go rapidly on, and the means of repelling force by force are universally adopting. So, your task is again, what is the one main idea that they're saying here? So, there's 1 or 2, but see if you can pull the main idea, and it's clearly stated in this document. See if you can find it, and then tell me if this shows that there is or is not an American identity or unity. Go. 4 minutes. Get to work. Read again. And find the main idea in this document. Two and a half minutes. Again, talk with someone if you're not sure. Raise your hand if you need help. Again, use this time to think about history, not other stuff. So 2 minutes, start rephrasing your, or start pulling your main ideas, and then tell me if this answers the question. Think about the facts that you can use, but outside information might they be talking about. Come on, folks, you have 30 seconds left. Some of you have written nothing. Okay. Henry, what is the main argument? Shh.
After that, they're saying that the colonists should defend like the rights and from the king.
The colonists will defend themselves?
Yeah.
And who is going to defend themselves? Who among the colonists? Like, which colonists are going to defend themselves? Same line. Which colonists? It's the beginning of that line. No, the Junto's not going to do it. They are not. But except them, who else is going to... Eva? Yeah, all North America. All North America is now firmly united to defend their liberties. All North America is going to defend their liberties. That's the main point, right? We're going to defend our liberties. Especially if someone tries to take them away, we are going to defend them. That's the main argument they're trying to make in this document. Okay. Are there any other main points you guys want to talk about? Are you guys okay with that one? That's a pretty solid one. So, Marlon, does it show that they are or are not united? It shows that they are united. How do we know?
Because they will unite in order to protect their rights and what they believe for.
Yeah, it says that one, they're firmly united. So there's the word. They're firmly united to defend their liberty. So clearly, we know that it shows that they are united because they're willing to work together to fight for their rights. And by the way, what was one technique that they used to fight for their rights? That is mentioned here, but you guys didn't see it clearly? Or what's one technique they always liked to use whenever the British took away their rights? They would boycott. Oh, look. The association, like the Continental Association? Could that be outside information? Most definitely. So the Continental Association, you can mention the boycott. You can talk about the non-importation agreement. You can say, who organized these boycotts? Who? The Sons of Liberty. Or you can say the Continental Congress. It's all exciting stuff. Good there? Does everyone understand that one? There, it's very clearly stated. We are united. Oh, and so to show that we're united? Yes, because we said so. Document D. They call me a brainless Tory. But tell me, my young friend, which is better? To be ruled by one tyrant 3,000 miles away, or by 3,000 tyrants not a mile away? I tell you, my boy, there is just as much lies in politics 70 years ago as there is today. So first off, what's a Tory? Someone who's what? loyal to the king. So, what is he trying to say? 4 minutes, figure it out. All right, so again, what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna go ahead and analyze document, what is this, D? Document D. So who can tell me what the main argument is of document D? So let's go with Leilani. What is the main argument of document D? Yeah, it is better to be ruled by the king, that one tyrant, than by 3,000 tyrants, the colonists, right? I'd rather be ruled by the king who's 1,000 miles away versus these 1,000 colonists 1 mile away. By the way, he's arguing different types of government. So he's suggesting he'd rather be ruled by one tyrant versus 3,000 tyrants. What kind of government would that be? A democracy. He's saying, do I really want 3,000 people to be telling me what to do versus one person telling me what to do? And the other basic argument is that it doesn't matter to him whether it's a tyrant or a king anyway, because what? Regardless, both tyrants or both kings and democracies are lies or corrupt, right? So the other argument is that politics is corrupt regardless of what you choose. So he's obviously a Tory. So the question then is, how does this connect to the prompt? Does this show that they are or are not united? Let's go with Amalia. What do you think? Why not? Why are they not united? Because the Tories are loyal to the king, and they're obviously not for independence, right? Good. Good. Yeah. So obviously it shows they're not united because there are some who believe that this democracy or this new government's a bad idea. So what kind of facts can we include in this document? So what other things can we talk about in this document to kind of push this argument forward? So we know he's a Tory, so what other things can we think about? What are other facts when you think of Tory? Loyalist, yeah, he's a loyalist. So we can talk about him being a loyalist. What other facts can we think of when we think of the Tories or loyalists? They're spies, definitely. They acted as spies against the revolution. Any other facts that we can think of? Like if maybe the opposites of them? Whigs or the Patriots, yeah, definitely. Whigs or Patriots. Okay, so we understand the document? Everyone's clear? All right, moving on to the next document. This is the Declaration for the Causes of Taking Up Arms by the Continental Congress. Here we go. A declaration by a representative of the United Colonies of North America now met in Congress at Philadelphia, setting forth the causes and necessity of their taking up arms. The arms we have been compelled by our enemies to assume, we will, in defiance of every hazard, with unabating firmness and perseverance, employ for the preservation of our liberties, being with one mind resolved to die freemen rather than live like slaves. Lest this declaration should disquiet the minds of our friends and fellow subjects in any part of the empire, we assure them that we mean not to dissolve that union which has so long and so happily subsisted between us, and which we sincerely wish to see restored. We have not raised armies with ambitious designs of separating from Great Britain and establishing independent states. So your task is, again, there are 2 or 3 main arguments in this document. Let's see if you can find them and tell me if it shows that the colonies are united or have a common identity. You have 4 minutes. Get to it. So read and analyze. Get to work, folks. Underline, highlight, do whatever you have to do. But find Every paragraph has an argument, basically. So see if you can find what the argument is for each paragraph. For those that need further guidance, see if you can analyze these few sentences for the main arguments. See if any of that makes any sense to you. But those are the main parts you need to understand when analyzing this document. About a minute and a half left. Okay, let's see what you guys were able to come up with. Isaiah, what is one argument being made in these documents?
That having bare arms was that they can have bare arms to like protect their liberty.
Right, they're pretty much going to defend themselves, right? They're going to defend their rights. Good, so that's that argument right there. They're definitely going to defend themselves. Awesome. Rosa, what else is an argument being made here?
So far I have the United Colonies talk about taking up arms.
Yeah, so they're united, and they're going to defend themselves, definitely. And what's one other major argument? Who can tell me what's another main argument in that last paragraph being made? What's the major argument being made here? Pedro?
That they don't want to dissolve their union with Britain.
Which, wait, in your own words, means what? What are they not looking to do?
They don't want to basically break away from India.
They're not looking to break away from England. Very good. They're not looking to declare independence. So those are their three major arguments. So, based on this, though, does this show that they are united and have a common identity, or are not united and do not have a common identity? Lewis, what do you think?
They are united
Why are they united, in your opinion?
because
No, based on this document. What I mean, how do you know that they're united?
they want to fight for their rights.
and they want to fight for their rights
United.
or together, right? So the important part is that they said we are united colonies, and together we will preserve our rights, okay? So remember, folks, when you're analyzing arguments here, you have to analyze this document specifically. Sure, you can have inferences and like, oh, I remember when they once said this, but you can't, oh, I think that what they mean is this, or I remember one time, but you really have to focus on what this specific document is saying. Does that make sense, folks? So make sure you're always inferring on this specific document. So my question then is, what facts can we talk about, or what documents or facts does this remind us of as outside information? The Declaration of Rights and Grievances, very good. The Declaration of Rights and Grievances. Any other document that this reminds you of, or any other facts or events or people? Josie? Olive Branch Petition, definitely. Good. Does anyone have another one? Any others out there you think of? You could mention Continental Congress, but it's already up here. So the Continental Congress is already mentioned. So you can't use it as a fact because it's already part of the document. But yeah, I mean, at least that you know it is the Continental Congress. That's a good thing. But again, good there? Solid? Move on to document this one. What are we, F? F. We saw a set of men under the auspices or guidance of the English government and protected by it for a long series of years, rising by easy gradations to such a state of prosperity and happiness as was almost enviable. But we saw them also run mad with too much happiness and burst into open rebellion against that parent who protected them against the ravages of their enemies. And why was the sudden transition made from obedience to rebellion? But to gratify the pride, ambition, and resentment of a few abandoned demagogues who were lost to all sense of shame and of humanity? The generality of the people were not of this stamp, but they were weak and unversed in the arts of deception. So the first thing you guys should know is what demagogue means. That's a pretty important term you guys need to understand. So a demagogue is a leader who takes control by taking advantage of people's emotions rather than their reason. So imagine if they were, I don't know, like after the Rodney King riots. You guys familiar at all with the Rodney King riots? I know you guys were not born yet. Something more. Okay, Trayvon Martin, more contemporary to you guys. So Trayvon Martin. Could it have been very easy to take advantage of all that anger in the American community, especially in black communities, over the killing of Trayvon Martin and then like have riots all over the place? Yeah. Could it have been really easy for someone to rise and be like, are we just gonna take this? Shouldn't we rise up? Yeah, we're all gonna rise up and we're gonna go and fight. We're gonna burn down the police stations and we're gonna take it back. And we're gonna have a revolution. And might a lot of people who were angry at the time get caught up in that kind of rhetoric? So that's what a demagogue is, someone who takes advantage of people's emotions, rather than someone that says, yes, we should be angry, but what we need to do is write to our congressman and peacefully protest and show them that we are not a dangerous community and we should not be stereotyped as these dangerous people, that we are civilized. Would that person be a demagogue? No, because that person is rational. They're trying to, sure, they're still trying to, affect their emotions a little, but he's trying to make them reasonable, trying to make them take reasonable actions. But a demagogue is trying to take advantage of people's anger and frustrations and turn them towards rioting or revolution or whatever else. So your task, read this document, tell me what the main arguments are, and connect it to the prompt. If you can think of any outside facts, let's also do that. You have 4 minutes. You know the drill. Again, a few of the things you might want to focus on. Time! So let's take a look and see what we've got going on here. What are the main arguments? Let's go with Leilani. What are the main arguments, you think? What's one major argument being made by Peter Oliver here? Say that one more time. Huh? I can't hear you though. Just say. They think that they're acting childish and like demagogues. So yes, they might be acting like demagogues, but I'm okay with the idea that they're acting childish. That's a bit appropriate with regard to this one. Let's see if you can expand on that idea. Lewis, what are some other ideas being argued in this document?
The British are arguing in the colonies and questioning them as to why they are rebelling when they provide many things to them, yet they don't appreciate their generosity.
Right, I think really what it comes down to is this idea of childish is right, but really it's more an idea of it's an ungrateful rebellion, right? Like they did so much for them, they cared for them like a parent, and now they're going to rebel against us. So I think the first argument being made here in the idea of that open rebellion is that it was an ungrateful rebellion. It's an ungrateful rebellion. But what's this idea in the end here? Who can tell me what the argument at the very end is? This idea that the generality of the people were not of this stamp, that most people were not demagogues. They were weak and unversed in the arts of deception. Does anyone think they know what that means? So first off, what does it mean to be unversed in the arts of deception? What does it mean, arts of deception? Jesus?
Oh, it's like when you're believed to believe something, and it's like you're deceived.
No, but I mean like the term arts of deception. What does that mean? Someone who's good at what? Lying, deceiving people. And unfortunately, the demagogues, they're arguing, are good at the art of deception. But they, and who is they? The colonists were weak and they were unversed. What does it mean to be unversed? They're not good at. They're not good in the arts of deception. So according to Peter Oliver here, what is he saying about the revolution? What caused the revolution? So the arts of deception, what does that mean? So the ignorance of the colonists caused the revolution. How? Because what happened? Yeah, the colonists were ignorant. So what happened, and therefore there was a revolution. Yeah, but why did they rebel? You have these, right, so you have ignorant colonists, and you have a rebellion. So how did we go from ignorant colonists to rebellion?
Because when a demigod would tell us something,
Yes, the idea is that the demagogues lied to the colonists to create a revolution. That's the argument being made here, that the demagogues lied to the colonists to create a revolution. That this revolution was not fought over rational principles, but rather this was a revolution fought over anger and frustration, and the colonists were taken advantage of by demagogues. And so if that's the case, folks, what kind of examples can we think of to prove them right here? What facts can we think of to prove that they did take advantage? Jasmine, what are some facts that we can use? The oppressive acts, yes, but I want you to be more specific. What things happened for the... What things happened so that we know that demagogues took advantage of the people? Like, how do they take advantage of them? Jerry? The Boston Massacre is a really good example. Right? Instead of calling this an accidental killing of innocent people, or an accidental killing of a dangerous mob, they called it a deliberate attack on an innocent crowd. And so is the person who wrote that trying to be a demagogue and kind of inspire the emotions of the colonists? He's a demagogue. Who was that guy that wrote that? Samuel Adams. So what other facts can we think of? Sons of Liberty. So those guys might be demagogues. That might be who they were talking about. Might these be the 3,000 tyrants that Tory was talking about earlier? These Sons of Liberty? Possibly, right? This is who he might have been talking about. These people who had lied and, come together and tricked the American people. So the question now is this. With this new knowledge, does it show that the colonists were or were not united? Janelle, does it show the colonists were or were not united? They weren't united. Why not? Like, were they united in revolution? You say they're not, and why not? How do we know that they weren't united? Okay, I'm going to come back to you, okay? So why weren't they united then? Who can tell me why they weren't united? Daniel?
some were deceived into rebellion.
Yeah, I think the main argument being made here is they weren't united because some of them were tricked into rebellion. And if I tricked you to go to the dentist, were you and I united in going to the dentist? No. So again, the idea is that they weren't united because some had to be tricked into going to rebellion. So Janelle, back to you. Again, why were they not united? Because they were tricked into going into a rebellion. Okay, they weren't united. If they were united, then would we have to have tricked them? No, but because we had to trick them, Peter Oliver says they're not united, they were tricked. That's what happened. Good with this one? So a little bit harder, but that's okay. Next document. This one shouldn't take you the full 4 minutes. Read it and just tell me what the basic argument is and tell me if it shows that they're united or not. Get to work.
You have to sing it while you read it so you don't want to sleep. All these colonies with him. This is what they survived. What do you questions are no?
the main argument in this document because it shows that they are or are not united. And tell me some facts. One more minute.
They were having the East Indian Company, and there's towns right here. So yeah. So it's talking about the English towns.
Alright, most people seem to be content with this. Here we go. Isaiah! What do you think? So, what is the, quiet down, main argument of this document? Yeah, that's also the main argument. Yeah, I mean, the idea is that clearly this is contributors of donations for the relief of Boston, right? So they're donating stuff, and the idea is who's donating? Different colonies. So colonies are donating to Boston. That's the main argument, right? And your argument is that they are also united because they're donating to Boston, right? So good. Now, my question here is, of these 5 on this list, which 2 are considered to be the most important in showing that they're united? North and South Carolina. Why are these the most important in showing that they're united? Because they're southern colonies supporting the northern conflict. So that's why they're the most important. I mean, you don't have to note that particularly, but if you were able to note that, would you get bonus points? And also, I just wanted to point out that it's just awesome to note that there are southern colonies on this list to further show that they are united. So yeah, what facts can we think of when we read this document? Yeah, Brianna. Yeah, the first Continental Congress, they are the ones who definitely tried to help organize this. Any other facts, maybe as to why this might be happening? George Washington? Why are we talking about George Washington? He was a uniting figure. I see. Uniting figure, George Washington. So maybe George Washington was helpful in doing this. Why might this have happened also? Why did we have to support Boston in the first place? But specifically, the Intolerable Acts and the Boston Port Act, right? All good stuff. Did anyone have any questions because of the list there? Not know what a thing was? You know what a sloop is? It's a boat. A sloop with provisions means a boat with stuff. Bushel is large bags of rice. A bushel is grains of rice. Bushel's a bag. So bushels of grain, bushels of rice, bags of. Rye is a different, it's like a grain. There's rye, barley, oats, wheat, rye. You can get rye bread at the store if you wanted to. All right, last document then. Document F. Okay. Here we go. When then is the American this new man? He is either a European or the descendant of European, hence that strange mixture of blood which you will find in no other country. I could point out to you a family whose grandfather was an Englishman, whose wife was Dutch, whose son marries a French woman. He is an American who, leaving behind him all his ancient prejudices and manners, receives new ones from this new mode of life he has embraced. He becomes an American by being received in the broad lap of our great alma mater. An alma mater is a place where you learn. Here, individuals of all nations are melted into a new race of men, whose labors and posterity or future generations will one day cause great changes in the world. This great metamorphosis has a double effect. It extinguishes all his European prejudices. He forgets that mechanism of subordination, that servility of disposition which poverty had taught him. So, lastly, identify the arguments, connect it to the prompt, give me some outside information. 4 minutes. You know the drill.
He is
2 minutes.
either a European or the descendant of European. And then they were talking about interracial marriage. Like some English guy was married to a Dutch woman's son married a French woman. And for some reason he was yeah, because like, pretty much you were trying to.
So here's some guiding words on the text.
You were trying to be someone you are not because you came from Europe. Don't you forget it? Yeah, that's what's
I think it's a lawyer.
They're saying America would have been possible without Europe. Yes, because Europe, because if you're competing with America, that's why.
1 minute.
No, he's criticizing America. He is European or descendant of a European. Yeah, he's saying like, oh, there could be no America without Europe first. And don't you forget it. Americans are melted into a new race like men. It's also like they're also talking
Okay, Lewis, what is the main argument being made? America is a diverse country. Definitely, he's making that argument that America is a diverse country. What else is a main argument being made here, Michael?
That pretty much Americans are as European as the next guy.
What does that mean?
Pretty much, they're the same. The Americans and Europeans are the same people.
Americans and Europeans are the same people? I don't think that's what he's saying. I don't think that he's saying that Americans and Europeans are the same. He's saying that they come from the same people, so I would agree with that they come from Europeans, but he's not saying that they're the same. Emma, what's he saying here? Mm-hmm. So they're definitely diverse. You have this melting pot. They no longer have the same kinds of manners and habits as the old people. You guys are all dancing around this idea that I want you guys to hit upon. Jasmine, what is the main idea being made here? I mean, all these points are right, but it's hammered there. What is the point about this document? That what?
Like the identity of everyone, like they might be different, but they're still the same. Like in a way.
So they might be different from who? But they're still the same. So that's kind of it all. So it's kind of the same line that Michael was saying, that they're similar, but they're from the same people, but they're different. Natalie?
Oh no, Jackie.
Jackie?
That Americans will contribute greatly to big changes in the world.
America will lead to great leaps and big changes in the world. That's something that he's saying. Oh, like he thinks that's cool, but that's not his main argument. Beatrice?
I think that American colonists are straying away from the European manners and are adopting new ones to save most British and
That they formed this new race of man in this no mode of life called American. The main argument being made here, folks, is that this new diversity that's descendant from the Europeans, because it's a melting pot, they've created a new race or a new identity called American. That's the main argument. You're all kind of right, but the major argument is that because there is a mixture of blood, because there is a new mode or way of life, we've created a new race that we are going to call American. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, because it's not European. It might have come from European, but is it European? No, like, do we call ourselves European today? No, we have some European influence, right? Like our language is European, whatever else. But do we look at ourselves and think, oh, we're European? No, because we're different enough to suggest that we're not of Europe anymore. We might have influences from, we might have come from, but we're no longer European. Okay, so what kinds of facts, or rather, does this then show that we are or are not united, or that we do or do not have a common identity? Isaiah, the computer's choosing it. Does it show that we do have a common identity or not? If we are all American.
Yeah.
Yes. Why?
Because saying that they're American and like united.
Yeah, we're united and we're American, and we all have the same kind of lifestyle now, right? We all have developed a new kind of lifestyle, a new way of life. We're brand new. We have new experiences. That's what Hector St. John Cleveker was trying to say. So what facts can we use then? What facts can we use in this document to identify the fact that we are actually this new American identity, or how did that come to pass? So what facts can we use? So folks, what facts can we use? Yeah, Jerry. Huh? Yeah, so you can talk about New York and that diversity that they had, definitely. Any other facts that we can use that show that we had a new way of life or a new common identity or anything else? Yeah? Maybe we can talk about the Declaration of Independence, how, you know, that was promoting this idea of this new type of person. We are this new American. Anything else that made us different or unique or special? The fact that we had what that the Europeans did not? Yeah, we had democracy, sure, why not? Democracy. Okay. Good? Okay. So that, folks, was an exercise in analyzing documents. What took us about an hour, again, should take you about 15 minutes when you learn to do this better on your own. Now, a few things to keep in mind. On the day of the AP test, the nice part is that you don't have to use all the documents. When you're analyzing it, my rule is you only have to use half plus 2, okay? The idea is that if there are 8 documents, how many do you have to use? 6. If there are 10 documents, you have to use 7. That's how math works. But you don't have to use all of them. So again, let's say you came across a document that was confusing, like this one. Could you just skip it? You're like, okay, I don't know what this is telling me, just move on to the next document. And so you have that kind of flexibility because you don't need all the documents. All you need is half plus 2. And that will help you with your time. Also, I mean, when you're reading your documents, you can just write down the main idea in like a few words or like just like 3 words and then move on. But ultimately, is this practice helpful in learning how to analyze documents? Because you have to understand the thought process. So, going back to the question, based on the documents that you've read, to what extent had the colonists developed a sense of their identity and unity as Americans by the eve of the Revolution? Based on what you understand now, I want you to draft a thesis, an although thesis, explaining whether or not and by how much you think they developed a common identity or an American identity and unity. Does that make sense? So I want you to answer this question now based on the documents that you've read. So I'll give you guys about 5 minutes to do that. Get to work. Draft a thesis. Answer this question now that you are informed. Write it on the bottom of that sheet there. On your chart, it says thesis. Write it on the section where it says thesis on your chart. See that? Yeah? What are you trying to do there? feel like they did not establish a common identity, you would say, although some historians may believe that they did establish a common identity, it is more correct to say that they didn't because, and then you'd explain why briefly. And if you feel like they did establish a common identity, you might say something like, although some historians may believe that they did not establish an American identity or unity, it is more correct to say that they did because, and then provide 2 or 3 examples. So, finish up. Yes, so although some may say that they did not form a common identity and unity, it is more correct to say that they did because, and one example that you used was because they created a new race of American, a new race called American. Yeah. And then obviously you'd include 2 more other facts. You might include the idea of diversity as one of the reasons that they were having a new unity. And then you can also maybe mention things like they were willing to fight with each other together to defend their liberties. Something like that. Let's choose 2 more. Jerry.
Although some may believe that the Americans weren't united or had a common identity even to the revolution, it is more correct to say that they were and did, due to how they were starting to call themselves Americans, how the colonies supported one another during times of oppression, how defending each other's rights and liberties with their lives.
Good. So although they would say that they weren't, it is more correct to say that they were united and had a common identity because they were willing to defend themselves, defend each other and defend their rights, to come to each other's aid, and by calling themselves American, right? Yeah, so again, you mentioned 3 key facts that you picked up from the documents. Good. And one more. Pedro.
Although some historians may believe that the colonists never developed a sense of identity by the eve of the revolution, it is more correct to say that the colonists had in fact developed a sense of identity by the eve of the revolution. For starters, the colonists were united through arms acts that helped protect their rights. They were also united because after the Boston Massacre, all of the colonies, including the southern one, helped this one colony in need. Finally, there was a sense of common identity because of the amount of diversity, which made the colonists see themselves as Americans.
Okay, so the facts that you used are 1, that diversity created a new identity. The colonists were willing to help each other after the Boston Port Act, not the Boston Massacre. And 3rd, what was the first one you said again?
Arms acts?
They're willing to defend themselves and take up arms together. Good. So again, does everyone have a basic idea of how to formulate a thesis once reading the essays and the documents and whatever else? The documents inform your answer, right? So it's important to make sure that whenever you're writing an essay on this, you read the documents to help you decide what kind of answer you're going to formulate in the future. Good. Make sure your name is on this, folks. You're going to pass that in. I'm just going to give you some credit, and then I'll pass it back to you. I have yet to decide if this is going to be the essay you will have for this unit yet. It may or may not be. We'll see. But otherwise, go ahead and all I want is the chart. I don't need the documents. The documents are yours. But pass up the chart, and that's the 1999 DBQ.